We live in a universe that is alive with stars. Our own galaxy, the Milky Way, has 400 billion stars or suns. There are at least 100 billion solar systems just in the Milky Way. And there are billions of galaxies like ours. The Earth is like a tiny grain of sand on a huge celestial beach, and this isn't the only beach. Why would there only be life on Earth? SIXTO presents.
Hola amigos, soy SIXTO PAZ.
Hi my friends, I'm SIXTO PAZ Wells. I was born December 12, 1955 in Lima, Peru. My father used to research UFOs before I was born, so I was raised in an environment where the subject was common. In fact, my father used to teach my brothers and me, when we were boys, to think that it would be impossible that there would be life only on Earth. He said it would be very strange indeed if there were no life beyond this planet. My father, with some friends from the Air Force, created an institute for the study of UFOs. In 1973, he was invited to speak to a yoga group, and I went along with him. I was 17 years old then. While I was there, I met a group of people who were very much into spiritual subjects, although not in a religious way. I liked so much what they had to say that I spent some time with them practicing breathing, relaxation, concentration, and the meditation of Hatha Yoga and Mantra Yoga. The following year, 1974, a report in the most serious and conservative newspaper in Lima, El Diario El Comercio, said it had been discovered that outer space was not a place of deathly silence as believed, and that noises coming from the universe were a cacophonous riot of sounds, some of which might be other civilizations trying to communicate with us across the universe. This interesting report made my father invite Dr. Victor Yáñez from the police hospital in Lima, who held a high degree in masonry and was a member of the Theosophic Society, to lecture on telepathy, or transmission of thoughts across long distances. The doctor said that if people of other worlds were trying to communicate with us, they might not just come in spaceships. They might try to communicate through our thoughts, or astrally, through our dreams. This idea seized my imagination with such force, and when I got home and told my mother and sister what I had heard, we decided to try it out, to play a game where we would try to clear our minds and receive a message from beyond. We sat down at a table with paper and pen and agreed to write down any thoughts that seemed not to be our own, but coming from somewhere else. By doing so, we hoped to detect a possible message. We started to practice on meditation, and about 15 minutes later I felt an irresistible urge to write something down, and an anxiety that forced my eyes open. I was not in any trance state whatsoever, I was fully conscious. I started writing very quickly. I felt like someone was speaking in my ear, saying, "Living room, good place to communicate. My name is Oxalc. I am from Marlem, one of Jupiter's moons. You call it Ganymede. We will communicate with you, and soon you will see us." I thought this wasn't real, of course. It had to be a product of my imagination. But then my mother and my sister told me that they had received the same message, but they chose not to write it down. I had written it down as I was mentally receiving it. This is called psychography, or automatic writing. Next day, with some friends, we repeated the experiment. This time, though, we asked for a signal. In the course of the experiment, we received instructions to go on February 7, 1974, to Chilca Desert, south of Lima. We arrived the day before to become acquainted with the environment. We didn't want to confuse a meteor, satellite, or airplane with the expected sighting. After darkness fell, suddenly there was a strange brightness. Behind the mountain, everything was lit as if it were daylight. All of us saw a glowing object moving along the mountain crest. When it stabilized on the right side of the horizon, the members of our group started asking each other, "Do you see it?" "Yeah, I see it too." "What is that light?" As it started to descend, it hovered at an altitude of some 80 meters. It projected a light as bright as the midday sun. It was shaped like a disc and had a dozen small windows. We all felt terror, panic. We'd never been so frightened. And yet we all grasped in our minds the message that was sent. They wouldn't come down at that moment because we couldn't control our emotions. Later there would be a time and place. That time came months later when they landed in the desert, and we had the opportunity to see them physically. Anthropomorphic beings, humanoid, similar to us. At the beginning, their communication was all telepathic. Had it all ended there, these experiences wouldn't have much significance. But a Spanish journalist, Juan José Benítez, who today is known worldwide for his Trojan Horse series of books, back then a correspondent for the EFE news agency, was sent to Peru to cover the story about a group of teenagers who claimed to have had contact with extraterrestrials. We went out to the Chilca Desert with him. And at the exact time, the exact day announced and messages that we had received, this journalist was able to spot 2 UFOs in the sky. To us, they were DAVs, directed alien vehicles. The sighting demonstrated to his satisfaction that it is possible to establish contact with extraterrestrial beings. When he returned to Spain, Juan José Benítez wrote his first book, UFOs, SOS to Humanity. This book made our contact experience known around the world. As the years progressed, our communication with these beings became more and more fluent. We were allowed to receive the information that we are about to share with you, stories about the cosmic plan, extraterrestrial cosmogony, and the origins of humanity. It is the story of how the human being is the result of extraterrestrial genetic experiments, and how, through our biological history, there has been hybridism and crossbreeding, stellar shipwrecks, colonization, and even deportation of aliens to our world. Without considering the extraterrestrial link, human history doesn't make sense. UFOs, our extraterrestrial past, the cosmic plan. In the early 70s, there began to appear in the south of England a series of mysterious patterns imprinted on field grains. These markings were referred to as agroglyphs, or crop circles. They always seemed to appear at harvest time and on grain fields. In the Middle Ages, the same phenomenon in harvest fields was recorded. The patterns appeared, and at the time they were considered to have been made by the devils, by the fairies. They were called fairy circles, and the people were warned that whoever walked inside them ran the risk of disappearing. When these patterns began to show up in the 70s, at first they were simple figures, circles, triangles, and rectangles. When they were just circles, it was first thought it might be a geomagnetic phenomenon, or the result of whirlwinds or small tornadoes. But when the figures started becoming more complex, more beautiful and larger, there was really a compelling interest in investigating them. This interest increased even more when researchers realized that the spikes of grains were folded. They weren't broken. This was not the mark of a person stepping on them or a violent impact. A subtle force had folded the spikes. There was a strange sort of mutation in the crystals of the grains, suggesting that a magnetic force or some type of energy had made the figures. It appeared to be a message from the heavens to us here on Earth. In 1996, at Oliver's Castle, a video was made of some illuminated spheres that began to flutter over the harvest fields, and in fractions of seconds they made an imprint, these same type of figures. On August 17, 2001, alongside the Shield-Bolton radio telescope, there appeared a set of 2 figures. Initially, a gigantic 3-dimensional face. At ground level, there was nothing visible that would make us believe that this was a face. These were just little piles of weed. But that face is not unknown. It is identical to the face of Sidonia on Mars, a face that was discovered on a mountain on the surface of that planet. And what is the other figure? A rectangular figure that turns out to be the answer to a message that was sent from Earth on November 16, 1974. Frank Drake, a friend of Carl Sagan, using the big radio telescope of Arecibo, Puerto Rico, had sent a radio signal to space to M13, the great nebula of Hercules, located 24,000 light-years away. He hoped that at some time some intelligent civilization would receive it and would respond. Radio waves travel at the speed of light, almost 300,000 kilometers per second. That radio wave would take 24,000 years to get there, and if there had been an answer, it would have taken 48,000 years to receive the reply. Who would be here on Earth to receive the answer? Nevertheless, the answer didn't take 48,000 years, but only 27 years. And not through radio waves, but through imprints on fields of grain. From the figure, it can be seen clearly that these beings are familiar with the elements of communications that exist here on Earth. In this case, the universal language of numbers, of mathematics. They also knew our components of life. According to the genetic code, there are variations on the father's side. It is mutated or changed. This suggests that they are a sort of transgenic beings, or we are a variation to them. The average height of these beings, at least the ones that appear in this design, is 120 centimeters, small with a big head, like many similar beings that have been observed in different parts of our world. In terms of location in their solar system, counting from their sun, they would be occupying the third and fourth orbits and the moons of the fifth planet. But if we look very carefully, they have 9 planets around their sun, a significant coincidence with our own solar system. Perhaps they are not answering from outside our solar system, but from inside, with bases on Mars, Earth, and the moons of Jupiter. Their means of communications is obviously not a radio telescope. That would be a very primitive form of communication for them. The form in this case is the same concentric and tangential circles that appear 1 year before year 2000 at the same place. This shows that in order to communicate with us, these beings had traveled through time and space, through cosmic folds, through interdimensional gates. They could do this because they mastered space and time. The fact that many of these figures appearing in fields in the south of England and in more than 25 countries are related to the latest discoveries of science indicate that there is a follow-up, a supervision of Earth's projects on their part. There appears to be an interest in helping human beings to remember a great deal of information that is already part of our own genetic code. If we were soul in this planet, all we have to do is remember. Little by little, scientists have been discovering that there are multiple dimensions, that we are multidimensional beings. We live in a material universe of 7 dimensions, and to act in this material universe, we have 7 bodies. One of them is the dense physical body. Then there is the astral body, which is the one of the emotions and desires, joined to the physical body through an energy umbilical cord known as the silver cord, which is broken when a person dies. The third vehicle is the lower mind, which is the one of the character and personality. When a person dies, the physical body dies, the astral body dies, and the character and personality die along with them. The fourth vehicle is the superior mind, the entity without psychic faculties, our extrasensory capacity. The fifth vehicle is the soul, the gathering place of our experience in past lives. The sixth vehicle is the spirit, which is our consciousness. The seventh vehicle is the essence. There are 7 bodies to act in the 7 dimensions of this material universe. Beyond the 7th dimension, like music in a superior octave, there is a universe parallel to this one, not a material one, but a mental universe, and the beings that originate there are the ones we know as angels, archangels, thrones, principalities, cherubs, seraphim, powers, dominations. That mental universe corresponds to the 8th, 9th, and 10th dimensions. And beyond those, starting in the 11th dimension, there would be a 3rd universe that is spiritual. The spiritual universe would have created the mental universe. The mental universe would have created the material universe. So God would not have created us directly, but through intermediate hierarchies, acting through a group of ultra-terrestrial beings, beings from the mental universe, which we know as Jello, the shining ones, the sons of God. The first civilization to emerge from this last creation had a very auspicious development. In a short time, they advanced a great deal, and they passed very quickly from the first dimension to the second, from the second to the third, and from the third to the 4th dimension of consciousness, which means that as these beings evolved, they were helping other civilizations to evolve. But for those at the head, there came a moment, a they became stuck in their own evolution. All of a sudden, those who were in the fifth and sixth dimensions were not able to continue to advance and make evolutionary progress. Why? The first three vehicles, the physical body, astral body, and the lower body, constitute what we know as the material consciousness plane. They connect us through the material plane with the material universe of 7 dimensions. The superior mind, the soul, and the spirit constitute the plane of mental consciousness and connect us through mental consciousness to the mental universe, and with the 3 dimensions of the mental universe, the 8th, 9th, and 10th dimensions. And the 7th vehicle, which we could also divide into 3, will, wisdom, and love, connects us through the spiritual plane with the spiritual universe, which would be the 11th and up. Those civilizations that have reached the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th dimensions of consciousness not only have evolved on the material plane, but also at the level of mental consciousness. They have had a great mental development, but they have become stuck there. They haven't been able to contact their spiritual consciousness, because those who were their guides or teachers were beings of the mental universe. They fostered the evolution and development of the first civilization, this last great creation. So if the pattern and source of reference of the teachings had some limitations, these limitations become evident in the evolutionary development of civilizations. Their evolution process stopped. During the contact experience, the extraterrestrials related how a cosmic gathering had taken place, in which the ultra-terrestrial beings of the mental universe and the Jelle, the creator parents, engaged in a dialogue in order to discuss what mistakes had been made during this last creation. Lucifer, or Luzbel, a very elevated entity of the mental universe, suggested that the mistake was that the evolutionary process was too easy for them, and perhaps not having created the necessary conditions to have an opposition force strong enough to demand maximum effort from these civilizations while they were developing. Lucifer suggested introducing dissociative entities from the mental universe into the material plane to act as demons, making the evolutionary process very difficult. This would re-establish the original rules. But Lucifer thought that they should work with those civilizations that had already been guided by them, and which they had acted directly upon. Those civilizations that were already in the 5th and 6th dimensions of consciousness, and were very close to reaching the 7th dimension, who were about to connect with the creator force. But the other ultra-terrestrials disagreed, saying it was like changing the rules of the game. Just as if we had a son in a military boarding school with rigid discipline. Just 1 year short of his graduation, we put him in a mixed school that is not a boarding school and has no rigid discipline. There is a high probability that he would fail. So these ultra-terrestrials said, you can't change the rules of the game for those already in the advanced stage. And these entities suggested working instead with new civilizations, civilizations that were just getting started. But there were also opinions that it wasn't fair either to vary the rules governing those civilizations. So the final decision was to work with civilizations that had never existed, with planets that had never developed. One of those chosen planets was the Earth. Why? Because according to the extraterrestrials, 1.2 billion years ago, a meteor shower extinguished life on planet Earth. Our world, being a dead planet, a planet with no future, would permit hosting this experiment, along with 7 additional planets. A group of extraterrestrial civilizations received authorization from cosmic hierarchies of beings of other dimensions to travel a long time in space and arrive on Earth before the Earth died, and stop the planet from dying by creating for the Earth a paradoxical alternate time. Let's imagine for an instant that time in the universe is like an ascending spiral, and in one of the curves of the spiral, the Earth died, but the universe continued. So a group of civilizations that is able to travel through space and time, through cosmic folds and multidimensional gates, arrives on Earth and stops the Earth from dying. These emissaries took charge of transforming acid oceans into alkaline oceans. They sowed spores in our world. They accelerated the process of life, hoping that our planet, at a certain moment, could foster a civilization with a psychic and spiritual potential, able to reach levels of evolution that not even these visitors had achieved. It would be a civilization able to reconnect with and establish a bridge of communication with the Creator universe, with the spiritual universe. It would be a civilization destined to surpass their own level of development. The prospect of this opportunity going to new civilizations did not make Lucifer happy. From the very first moment, he tried to boycott and sabotage the project and prevent it from going forward, because it wasn't what he had suggested. We will discover then that the first civilization to be established on our planet was of extraterrestrial origin. Beings of the constellation of the Swans landed on our planet, in a continent in the area corresponding to the present location of Antarctica. This first civilization was also called Antarctica. Later on, other beings arrived in what corresponds to the Mesozoic era, or Secondary era, and they installed themselves in the upper part of northern Europe, in what became the Hyperborean civilization, the Upper North. These beings coexisted with an unstable and violent environment, dominated by dinosaurs. They performed genetic manipulation as part of their mission, but then, 65 million years ago, without them being able to stop it, a meteor shower took place. That was a terrible disaster. A cosmic catastrophe was caused by an asteroid of nearly 10 kilometers in diameter, which hit our planet, leaving a crater of 250 kilometers in diameter on the coast of Mérida, in the Yucatan Gulf. The impact produced an expansive wave so violent that it wiped out a large proportion of the dinosaurs. Had not this happened, these creatures would have evolved into an intelligent form of life, and today they would be the ones to rule our planet with their intelligence. Our planet was so profoundly affected by the meteoric impact that we could almost say life was extinguished on our world. That's why the Earth was the first planet of the age selected for dismissal. 8 planets had been chosen, 2 per galaxy, from a group of galaxies that rotated around M31, a great nebula of Andromeda, located 2 million light-years from us. So there were 2 planets from each of 4 galaxies in that group. After planet Earth was dismissed, they concentrated on the remaining 7 planets. But with time, 3 of those planets were totally destroyed. Not even dust remained there. The original 8, the cosmic directors, ended up now with 4. A very worrying fact. Having the project fail on the other 4 planets, they decided to give a new opportunity to planet Earth. These beings who always travel through space and time for them not being the same as it is for us, came to our world and found out that 80,000 years ago, the Lemurian race, the black race originating from Earth, had evolved to such an extent that they had awakened all their potential, including their extrasensory perception. These human beings were capable of discovering that we were living in an alternate time, different from the real time of the universe, and that that time could be crossed. Part of this development resulted from the consumption of hallucinogenic plants, something that the extraterrestrials frowned on. When the extraterrestrials that had dedicated attention to the development of the other 4 planets found out that humanity on Earth was evolving and advancing, but had done it through a process that they considered unworthy, they decided to come here some 30,000 to 35,000 years ago and induce a terrible regression in the form of a collective forgetting or global amnesia on the part of humanity. This is mentioned in the Bible in Genesis chapter 11, when it refers to the Tower of Babel. There was an era in history when human beings used to speak the same language. What this means is that we had developed telepathy, extrasensory perception, and we had even been able to construct a ladder to the sky, meaning a connection with the superior, with other realities. And the Bible says that the Elohim were afraid that to the human being nothing would be impossible. So they decided to intervene, to make us forget. That is how 30 to 35,000 years ago, a terrible devolution of the human being was induced in the form of a generalized amnesia, which served to enable the visitors to reassert their own supervision and their control. 25,000 years ago, the beings of two big civilizations, Orion and Pleiades, were sent by the galactic counselors to intervene on our planet as guardians and sentinels. Some of them were beings from Orion, and others were beings of the Pleiades. Not all Orions had a humanoid or anthropomorphic appearance. There were ones with reptilian appearance, specifically the chief of the Orions, who was called Satan, an extraterrestrial, not to be confused with Lucifer, who was an ultra-terrestrial. Over centuries of angelology, the study of angels, so much confusion has developed that sometimes the same name is used to refer to an angel of light or one of darkness, and vice versa. For example, the word Satan, adversary, is used to refer to Lucifer when they are two completely different entities. The Guardians and Sentinels had the idea to evaluate the evolutionary process of humanity. As mentioned earlier, a terrible devolution had been produced, specifically referred to in chapter 11 of Genesis, when it says the Elohim saw that the human beings spoke the same language and that we had been able to build a ladder to the sky, that now nothing would be impossible for us. This ladder obviously wasn't a ziggurat, or a tower, or a pyramid, but a psychic and spiritual connection. So they decided to come here and confuse the languages. They made us forget, and that forgetting was a form of devolution as recorded in the cosmic plan. Then the responsibility of these guardians and sentinels was assigned to Satan, who was a loyal follower of the teachings of Lucifer. Satan took a moment to consider that if the project had failed in the other 7 planets, and that if here the experimenters had lost control of the experiment from the beginning, it could jeopardize the cosmic statu quo, the established order. The best thing to do, he reasoned, was cancel the project and end it, so that the experiment would not continue in our world. Not all the Guardians and Sentinels are in agreement with Satan's point of view, and some of them stayed loyal to the cosmic plan, while others turned against it. Thus a tension and crisis arose among the Guardians, initially on the theoretic level, but subsequently became a real war of the galaxies, whose echoes still resound throughout the universe. The Bible tells of the war between the sons of light and the sons of darkness, the war of the angels. The Mahabharata and the Ramayana talk about the true war of galaxies, with our world as a neutral scenario of their battles. At the end, the leaders of the opposition were subjected to extradition to Earth. They didn't want to come to help us. They were forced to come here. Even though not all the Orions participated with the dissidents, and many of them remained faithful to the cosmic plan, they were replaced by beings of Sirio, a greater clan, who along with the Pleiadians remained as guardians and sentinels. Those Orions who remained loyal were sent to the moons of Jupiter, and they remained there in mining colonies observing our planet, with hopes that someday they could act as planetary instructors and compensate for the damage that their fellows had caused us, or vindicate themselves as a civilization. Those beings that were deported here to the Earth should have changed their attitude, but that didn't happen. From the very first moment, they declared war to the death against humanity, and they tried to keep the cosmic plan from proceeding, so that humanity would not reach a level of evolution that they didn't want, or that they feared that the humans could achieve. They constituted a secret world government, fearsome and negative. These satanic forces started to conspire terribly against humanity. Being accustomed to living for thousands of years outside our world,
they prematurely became old and died, becoming trapped in a fourth dimension here on our planet. Throughout history, they have influenced many human beings, persons with weak character and weak will. They connected these persons to politics, religion, and economy, to the leadership of the military, and to fashion and music, in order to sow worldwide chaos through these human agents and lead the world to its own destruction. The extraterrestrial beings of this terrifying and negative planetary regime are the ones who also somehow have influence over the Pleiadians to commit the serious transgression of having sexual relations with human beings on Earth. It was Semyasis, the boss of the 200 Pleiadians, who had sexual contact with the human beings. This is mentioned in Genesis chapter 6, when it says, "When the men started populating the earth and producing children, and the sons of God, the angels of heaven, seeing before their eyes that the daughters of men were beautiful, took as many as they wanted, and with them they procreated the ancient heroes of the past." That is how these 200 extraterrestrials had sexual contact and produced hybrids, mestizos, and were reunited in a group of 10 islands, the largest of them, Dondo Island, in the Atlantic Ocean. There they established their capital in Poseidon and in Poseidopolis. As Plato mentions in his dialogues, Critias and Timaeus, as well as in the Republic. Such was the knowledge and technology received from the extraterrestrials by the Atlanteans that it allowed them to develop large experimentation labs. They manipulated the brains of dolphins and whales, contributing to the advancement of these two creatures. They also allowed the Atlanteans to travel beyond our world, toward the stars. They had the intention of establishing colonies on Malek, Terma, Yoma, a planet that would have existed between Mars and Jupiter, and they would use Mars as a springboard to get there, because this would permit the Atlanteans to get far away from the evolutionary process of their planet and wouldn't affect it. They were allowed to pursue it. This is why we found a huge phase on Mars, discovered in 1976 by Viking 1 and Viking 2 in the Sidonia zone. Pyramids were also discovered in the Liceo zone, of what appeared to be ruins of large cities in the Utopia zone. The Atlanteans coexisted underground on Mars with a Martian race that would have received the Atlanteans with curiosity. The technology these Martians received and the great advancement developed by the Atlanteans led to the gradual decimation of the Martian civilization. It also attracted an asteroid of erratic orbit called in those times Marduk. It would have crashed against Terma, Yoma, or Malek, and the resulting meteor shower would have rained destruction on the colonies of Mars. That same meteoric shower would have reached the Earth, first making impact on the Moon. The Earth trapped two big fragments that remained for a time as additional moons, meaning that at a certain moment of planetary history we had 3 moons. Those additional moons would subsequently have been absorbed by the Earth. One of them crashed in the Pacific Ocean, leaving as an imprint the Philippines basin of 11 kilometers in depth. Later, the other moon fell in the Caribbean, leaving as impact the Puerto Rico basin of 9 kilometers in depth. This created a zone of magnetic aberration, where the line forces that go from pole to pole tend to curl, forming whirlwinds and vortices of electromagnetic forces that collapse space-time, opening gates to other dimensions. These great destructions would have caused the last major glaciation, 11 to 12,000 million years ago, and would have covered the Antarctic with ice. The Antarctic was a continent that was going through the last period of Lemuria, the period of Mu. This was the greatest advancement to the original black race on our planet. This was the greatest advancement of the original black race on our planet, after the intervention of the Guardians and Sentinels. The Lemurians had then to be rescued and taken out of there. They were taken to Mesoamerica in what is now Mexico, and that's how the Olmec civilization emerges. The last archaeological discoveries made in the state of Guerrero, on the Pacific coast of Mexico, demonstrate the Olmec culture was thousands of years older than we originally supposed, and that would explain their Negro facial features. The Olmecs also appear in the stelas in great stone sculptures driving spaceships, something that later we will see repeated in the Maya civilization itself. To counteract the nefarious effect of all these negative influences, 32 beings from 32 different civilizations were sent to Earth and landed in the desert of Gobi in Mongolia and founded the mythical Shambhala, the capital of the Dagartha kingdom of the extraterrestrial world. A web of tunnels and galleries was established, where large deposits and files of knowledge of the lost history of humanity reposed, in hopes that someday men of goodwill could have access to such knowledge. We could all awaken our consciousness and remember the mission that has been assigned to us in the cosmic plan. Learn to love and teach others to love. Love in its supreme exaltation, in its essence. After the disaster that supposedly destroyed Atlantis in the last period of Lemuria, the extraterrestrials, the guardians and sentinels, decided to accelerate the process of humanity, and that's how they concentrated their efforts in Mesopotamia, where the Sumeria project emerged. Sumer, or Sumeria, translates the country of spaceships, and it is there where the first pyramids, the ziggurats, are constructed. They were not astronomical observation towers or temples. They were towers of ascent and descent for spaceships, just like today we have been able to interpret from the clay tablets written in ideographic symbols and cuneiform that have survived to our days. In the Sumerian era, small city-states emerged where the extraterrestrials decided to work with large collectives of people, giving them instruction and knowledge, but discouraging dependency. The Sumerian civilization achieved a great level of development, and the Sumerians themselves elected the Patesios, the Elsios, as representatives of the people to maintain fluent communication with the An, the goddesses of the sky, who would visit from time to time. During each of their visits, a fluid exchange of information and knowledge took place. During each of their visits, a fluid exchange of information and knowledge took place. Back then, the planetary quarantine imposed by the guardians and sentinels was not that rigid, allowing not only Ans, the gods of the sky, to arrive here with good intentions to further the cosmic plan, but also the Anunnaki, the sons of the prince, reptile-looking beings connected to Satan and the satanic forces, who from time to time would act in our world in a very negative fashion, trying to conduce the Sumerians to fight against each other. Great wars were incited, and they encouraged very violent developments of peoples like the Sacarios, who ended up exterminating and destroying the Sumerians. The Sumerian project, working on a wide collective group of people, failed, because finally, at the end, dependencies had been created anyway. They were paying too much attention to the return of the Ans. The extraterrestrials, the guardians and the sentinels, and the planetary instructors decided therefore to work with an elite group of individuals. They chose for this the Egyptian priestess, heirs of the knowledge of Atlantis, survivors of the Atlantia, who came to Egypt with extraterrestrial knowledge, because there were extraterrestrial colonies in Egypt. Survivors of Sumeria settled there, so all that sum of knowledge and information was going to emerge as the great nation of Egypt. When still the rest of humanity was in the Neolithic age, the great Egyptian civilization appears. The great achievements of a civilization never occur at the beginning or the end, but at the height and splendor of development. The greatest development, extension and expansion of Egypt was between the 18th, 19th, and 20th dynasty of the new empire. Nevertheless, in that era, there isn't anything similar to the pyramids, which are of the 3rd and 4th dynasty, especially the pyramids of Cheops, Khephren, and Ceridius, the most famous, which date from the 4th dynasty. For these to be from the old empire, the most ancient Egyptian period, is impossible. This demonstrates that there is a connection with these beings from the sky and with the remaining Atlantis.
Los sacerdotes egipcios
The Egyptian priestess, after receiving this superior knowledge, were supposed to retransmit it to the people, sharing it in a way that was comprehensible, in a way it could be understood. Nevertheless, with time, the priestess, instead of sharing it with others, kept it for themselves, for self-education, and when initiating others, they didn't share all they knew, maybe because they considered that the others weren't worthy, or because they didn't want them to replace them in their work. The knowledge consequently started to become diluted, and it reached a point when knowledge was lost. Egypt fell under the influence of these terrifying dark forces that tried to get humanity to forget. So after failing in working with a wide group of people and also with an elite of individuals, it was decided to work with one individual and to program his or her genetics. By chance, the chosen one was Abraham, psychic since birth. He used to easily have telepathic communication with these beings, and what is more, he was such an intelligent man with such broad judgment that he accepted at that time, when there were 1,000 commonly accepted gods, the idea of one single god, which was a very advanced concept. The idea became to program Abraham's line of descendants, and you can see very clearly that all through the sacred history there is evidence of serious genetic manipulations or interventions of these beings. For example, Abraham was not able to have children with Sarah. Nevertheless, with the help of those from above, they finally had Isaac. Isaac married Rebekah, but Rebekah was not able to have children either. Nevertheless, with the Lord's help, she conceived Jacob and Esau. Jacob married his cousin Leah, and then Rachel, the one who he really loved, but she was sterile too. But with the help of these beings from other worlds, she finally conceived Joseph, he of the premonitory dreams, he of the talent of prophecy, the one who interpreted the Pharaoh's dreams. Samson was the son of sterile parents, Samuel the same. Mary the Virgin was the daughter of Joachim and Anna. They were not able to have children. With intervention from the heavens, Mary is born, creating conditions for the birth of Jesus Christ, who was not an extraterrestrial, but an extraordinary terrestrial. The New Testament tells the story of Jesus. Jesus had been a person, a human being on the earth, who through multiple reincarnations on this planet had reached a high evolutionary level. He did not need to reincarnate. However, out of love for humanity, he accepted his destiny to come back. He prepared himself for his 3 years of public life in such a way that a cosmic symbiosis took place in him, a transmigration, by which a being from the category of the sons of God, a angelic, a shining one of the creator parents named Michael, fused with him, coexisted with him during those 3 years, keeping him company in the realization of his great mission. What did this great mission consist of? Specifically to teach humanity that love is the strongest force in the universe, capable of overcoming everything and transforming everything, including overcoming death, understanding love as respect, tolerance, and forgiveness among human beings. The day will come, according to the Apocalypse, that humanity will have access to a certain knowledge that was hidden for ages. When this knowledge emerges, the forces of darkness will become subject to humanity for 1,000 years. At the end of the 1,000 years, which begin on the 22nd of December, year 2012, a new millennium will start. And at the end of that millennium, it is believed that humanity will take the side of the forces of light in a last great battle, the Battle of Armageddon. But what would happen if at the moment humanity finds out that we have been victims of a cosmic conspiracy in which extraterrestrials and ultra-terrestrial forces, our creator parents, and even our older siblings have conspired against humanity? What would happen if in that moment, instead of humanity struggling against the darkness, in a supreme act of love we say, "Father, forgive them, for they were mistaken"? They tried to prevent the evolution of man on Earth, and on the contrary, they made man of greater value and greater significance. Such was the pressure and the cold, meaning humanity, that the quality of the diamond is excellent. In this moment of forgiveness, a cosmic redemption of the Earth will be sealed. What is expected to happen in the following years? Humanity will access knowledge that was hidden. A wealth of information will come to light. Information that has been hidden by the governments and by religions. The enlightenment will be so profound that many people won't be able to resist it. Among the things that humanity is going to discover is that we are in an alternative time, paradoxical, that we are not in real time, and that we are getting closer to a reconnection, a synchronization of times. In the months and years following December 22nd, year 2012, we are going to see a speeding up of psychic potential in dreams and consciousness. Great transformations in the planet will take place at the ecological and climatic levels, including natural catastrophes of tremendous impact. Why? Because the Earth is getting closer to a great planetary labor. The Maya civilization wisely anticipated this. They considered that starting in the year 2003, each year symbolically will be like a month of pregnancy, leading to a great planetary birth. That great labor has been foreseen as taking place between now and December 22nd, year 2012. Will humanity be capable of fulfilling the great mission that it has been assigned? Will we really be capable of all-important moment of cosmic forgiveness? How will we be capable of such a gesture if prior to that we are not able to exercise tolerance and to forgive and accept our family and others the way they are? Today, the terrifying forces are trying to encourage whatever it takes to destabilize our civilization. Racial hate, ethnic hate, religious struggles and confrontations. We are at the most propitious moment in human history to demonstrate a real spiritual level in our striving for unity and diversity. We should emphasize everything that unites us and not what separates us. Remember that we are human beings, and our home is planet Earth, a planet predestined to be the light for others, the light of the cosmos. We are not the center of creation, but we are at the center of a cosmic expectation. Otherwise, so many extraterrestrial civilizations wouldn't have been coming since immemorial time to our world. We are living the most extraordinary moment of human history, a great defining moment. It is also the time of a great awakening. Either we succeed at passing through these events, or we will simply not achieve the goal. Not a lot of people are needed to change the world. The Hopi Indians, or Pueblo Indians, talked about 144,000 sun dancers who had to remain dancing through a night of darkness to ensure the birth of the next day. The Apocalypse teaches us about 144,000 people who washed their clothes, meaning that they awoke their consciousness. Relatively few people are needed to change the world. What is needed is that all those people who are evolving and growing give their best and remain constant and committed to the process of change. Let's remember that we live in a universe without limits. The only limit is our own ignorance. Don't believe anything you have heard. Think, reflect, but the most important thing is to feel, because the truth is inside of everyone.
Ya que la verdad está dentro de cada uno.